All right, welcome back to the Calixia Muscle Meets Machine podcast number 2. Today we have a great guest. His name is Ezara. You can find him at McChillin on YouTube or on Instagram. I am McChillin. I don't want to say too much about him because I'm going to let him do that himself. And just a little background on him is he was a pro gamer and now he's doing full out calisthenics and he's in a transition phase in his career. I've been speaking with him lately, and so I think you guys are really going to enjoy our talk today. So, Izera, could you fill us in on a little bit of who you are, your background, and your YouTube channel, your Instagram, and your where you are on your calisthenics journey?
Yeah, so my name is Ezara. I I was a competitive gamer for 6 years. I was a fighting game player. I mainly played Mortal Kombat and Injustice. After I stopped that, I went through it was a couple of years of a gap. Like once I stopped, but I started calisthenics January 2023. So I've been training for about a year and a half now, and I love it, man. Like it's crazy because I was a gamer who barely went to the gym, and now I'm a guy who trains a lot in the gym, but I don't really play video games like that anymore. But now I'm trying to bridge the gap between the two, and I'm trying to create more of a balance between gaming and fitness because I think they're more closely related than people may give them credit for. Like I think the communities have more commonalities than meets the eye. But I'm trying to balance the two, especially since I'm planning to compete again at Evo later this summer. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here and to talk more about calisthenics and video games and potentially how they're related to each other.
Okay, let's just jump into that because when you made that statement, I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I can see that, but I would like to know a little bit more about how you believe video games and calisthenics have a nexus between each other or some commonalities.
So for fighting games specifically, a lot of the characters are in really good shape. I mean, on one hand, some of them kind of look like they might be a little juiced up, and their bodies may be a little unrealistic. But I'd say for the most part, they're in pretty good shape. They know how to control their bodies, and I think maybe not some of the like static elements in calisthenics you may see in a fighting game. Like I don't think you'll see a front lever or a planche used as like a move, but I think they still have to place their bodies in certain positions to attack people, and that requires strength and flexibility. And I think if you really break down calisthenics at its most fundamental level, you need strength and flexibility. So you don't necessarily see that in the sense where you see like static holds or freestyling moves, but you do see it in the sense that their punches and their kicks are very powerful, and they may have to orient their body in a certain position to put them at an advantage. And I think that's where calisthenics and video games, at least like fighting games specifically, coincide with each other.
Okay, yeah, so that's how you see it. I thought you were gonna go on like another tangent where, in order to unlock certain moves, but I guess what game were you referring to when you think about calisthenics in video games?
I just think about any fighting game really. So the main ones would be Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Injustice. Um, no move specifically. I think just the fact that the way that they the way that they move their bodies and have full control of it, yet still having a lot of strength behind their attacks, can speak a lot about calisthenics. And I'll say too, at least for like the female side, because they're like a lot more flexible. You may see a lot of kicks where their legs are fully extended and they have better flexibility. I think that's like another detail that I wanted to add in there.
Right, because they usually are the ones who are like you're talking about like Raven or from Tekken or something or
Yeah, like you may see splits, or you may see some kind of movement where they're using their legs, and not only will their legs be fully straight, but I think just the way that they position their body, it demonstrates a lot of control of the body.
Right. Yeah, well, I think another similarity that calisthenics and video games have in common is that as you continue in developing your character, which is basically yourself because you are the main character of your universe, you start unlocking new moves. But the thing is, in a lot of the fighting games, the moves are already unlocked for each character. Whereas in the real world and in calisthenics, you can unlock those moves, which is actually kind of a similarity between some other games where as like I think about like Assassin's Creed, whereas like as you start getting more XP, you can start unlocking more cooler moves. And it's kind of like calisthenics. As you start putting more work into it, you start unlocking more difficult moves like handstand push-ups, planche, front lever. But I would like to see some sort of some Tekken or some Street Fighter, a character that's like a calisthenics background. How would you think they would fight though?
Mm, that's a good question.
Because a lot of
I'm,
calisthenic athletes, I don't see them like practice throwing punches or throwing kicks or like doing tumbling or like back handsprings. Like I would like to figure out a way where we can bridge the gap because I feel like free running and tricking or parkour kind of connects well with calisthenics.
yeah, I think so. I think Mortal Kombat probably wouldn't be the game that would have a character like that with a calisthenics background. I think Street Fighter is probably the best game I can think of, at least like big mainstream fighting game. I think that's the biggest one that would have the best chance to have a character like that. But I'm also not that familiar with different fighting styles, so I don't know what their style would be. But I think like you know how characters they'll have like a certain entrance before they fight. I could see like maybe he does some kind of acrobatic move, or he like
He hits a planche.
yeah, or like the way it starts, like he's coming out of a full planche, and then he just like lowers, and then he's like, "I'm ready to fight" or something like that. I think
Then he
that'd be
does like
pretty
a
cool.
kip up or something.
Yeah, yeah, or that.
Because like Eddie on Tekken, where here he was like a capoeira artist, and so you see him do all the capoeira moves. You see him meia-lua, low kicks, things like that. So we'd have to figure out a way to. But can we update characters on a lot of these fighting games? Like, what if we put in a petition to the gaming company,
What do you mean by update? Like
or what if
have them add more
we
moves?
add new characters?
Yeah, I mean Street Fighter 6 is still doing that. Actually, Mortal Kombat 1 is still doing that. I think Homelander is his trailer came out recently.
I didn't even see that. I didn't even know they're making new characters.
Yeah, because he might be one of the last characters for the season pass, but they definitely I think they still plan to add at least a few more to the roster.
Shit. Okay. What do you say? You said you were also connecting uh, video games with uh, calisthenics. Are you trying to connect any other like sectors with video games, or what's your I guess your 5-year plan now? Now that you have your background in what the pro gaming world is, and then you're starting to advance in calisthenics and you enjoy it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years now, or what direction?
I'm not opposed to going back and competing in games again. I think maybe I'll maybe I'll be more inclined once I go to Evo because I have some friends who are going. They heard I was going, and they're people that I haven't met before, but we've trained online before. So I think that'll be exciting. And obviously, I'm going to keep progressing in calisthenics, but I just want to continue to bridge the gap between gamers and gym bros because like I was on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and I think there's a lot there in the sense that I want to see more fake gamers. I don't want gamers to have a sedentary lifestyle where they're just in their room all day. And yeah, like they're perfecting their craft, they're getting good at video games, and they may have a career out of it, but it may be at the expense of their health. And with calisthenics, you don't necessarily need to go to a gym or a controlled environment to exercise. You can exercise in the comfort of your own home. You can go outside, which would actually be even better. You could go outside of your home, so like your front yard, your backyard. You could just use the world around you and manipulate like objects in your area to still get in shape and have a really good quality of life. So I would just want to try to create content that appeals to gamers, and I want to show them that they don't have to, they can train, but they don't have to necessarily go to a gym if they don't have access to it. They can still game, but still train. Like they can go to like an online training room and practice, and they can go in a real life training room and practice on their real body. That's what I want to do going forward.
Okay. Yeah, because you're right. I guess like, what would you say is the average lifestyle of a regular gamer right now? What is their diet and what does their physical activity look like?
It's definitely deteriorated over the years. A lot of that has to do with COVID and the pandemic. So it's probably not that good. It's probably very sedentary. I doubt that they do a lot of movement. Um, even if they are like in their house and they move around, like maybe they go downstairs or whatever to eat or whatever. I doubt that they do a whole lot of movement. So they're probably very stiff. They're probably not very flexible. They're probably not that strong. Their diet is probably pretty subpar. Like I doubt it's the best. I mean, some of them still live with their parents, which is fine. Some may be underage, so they're they're under 18, so they still have to. So sometimes their diet is kind of based upon their parents or their family, but for the most part, I would assume it's probably not that great.
So, and the great thing is that if you are a gamer and you have to go to some sort of health center or like a Planet Fitness or Fitness Connection, that could probably throw your whole mojo off because you're so like dialed in, you're at home, and then you got to make like a 20-minute drive, get ready, then get in there, and then, just like see what's available. Whereas if you're a gamer and you just have a dip bar in your house, even your room, if you just have like a regular dip bar, just like one of those regular parallel bars like from base block, the big ones that you can practice front lever on. It's like, yo, if you're a gamer, you should be doing that. Like you game, and then like after like every 1 hour, you go do practice front lever with bands or you do like pull ups, you do like the little iron gym on your door, you just lock that in. It's like, bro, if you're a gamer, calisthenics is the best route for you.
It really is, and I think accessibility is really the reason for that. I have a lot of equipment in my room even right now. Like
Right.
I have a pull-up bar, I have parallettes, I have a foam roller, I have resistance bands. So I have a lot of things at my disposal, and these are all things you can have in your own room. You can turn your room into like a miniature gym.
And it's just like that small amount of equipment that you do have, it doesn't even take that much space. Like your resistant bands, you could really just tuck that, hang that on the wall. The parallettes, you could tuck that under your bed. The P bars, that's probably the only thing that takes the most space. But instead of having to buy some huge ass treadmill and then carry it up and put it in your room and then trying to, imagine trying to have a Smith machine in your house or like in your bedroom, bro. You're better off doing calisthenics.
Exactly. Yeah. I think
So the
that's really one
equipment,
of the selling points that I want to like try to drive home as I make content in the future. I kind of wanted to show how it's very it can be a very simplified approach to start exercising, and I think calisthenics is the best approach to do that for the reasons we just named.
is just so much more convenient, and it is, and like if you could be gaming and all your equipment is right behind you just to get ready. So I guess what most gamers would probably ask is, what type of exercise can I do? What would you recommend them to do?
The same things that I would recommend to anybody who asks, how do I get started? I would just say to do the fundamentals. So I would say you need a pull up bar because you need to do some type of vertical movement.
Right.
But I mean, push ups and pull ups. And I mean, people say dips too, which I mean, you would have to get like a dip bar. So that might be, that could cause some inconvenience, I guess, depending on the size. But I
The
mean,
two dip bars, the red ones, like those are pretty small, right?
are they? I don't know.
Like I'd have to send pictures of them, but like the ones that you just buy for like $50, and they're about like maybe 3 feet high, and that's where most calisthenic athletes are practicing their front levers. But if you buy two, you can practice dips.
Okay, so I mean, with pushing movements, you really don't need. Technically, you don't need anything, and you
Yeah.
probably have things in your room already that you could manipulate, like a chair or a bed. So, like this bed behind me or this chair that I'm sitting on, you can use them to make your movements more difficult or make them more easier. Uh, with pull-ups, that's where like I would say you will probably need to like buy some type of bar or something to again that vertical pulling. But that for the most part, you don't need a whole lot, you know. Um, you can still use the floor for any core exercises and leg exercises too.
What type of leg exercises would you recommend?
Well, they sit down a lot, so like probably squats to start off. You
Open up
know,
that pelvis, right?
yeah, I would say squats. Really try to get full range of motion.
Ass to grass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
Some
I
lunges. So really emphasize stretching. Like you do some lunge pulsations and just like
I was gonna say for legs, like the way that I train, I I don't do a ton of leg work, but I do a lot of cardio. So I think that offsets it. But I would suggest people to do that because it'll encourage them to go outside, and it would require them to stretch to warm up their legs before they do any type of running or jogging. And being outside, it increases vitamin D. It can improve your mood. It can help improve your circadian rhythm. That's a pretty good hack too. And I mean, like cardio gets kind of shitted on in the fitness community, but it's definitely something that I would start promoting to people.
when it comes to legs, that's always been somewhat of like a conundrum for me in calisthenics because I'm like, dang, I really want to live that lifestyle where I don't have to use weights. So I'm thought, but how would you work on legs? And so, I mean, aside from like pistol squats and dragon squats, what I've been incorporating lately is more plyometrics. I want to try to increase my vertical and then also a little bit more like taekwondo kicks. I want to start working on those. And I've realized being able to efficiently move your legs and really creating that mobility is far more, at least to me, I feel it's more beneficial than just like having really huge, thick legs that you see bodybuilders have. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm really going more for functionality as opposed to just size. Like, oh yeah, you got some big quads, but I could whack the shit out of you with my head. Like, I mean, with my leg head, falcon kick right in your fucking neck. But it's like these bodybuilders can't even lift their leg up like higher than their waist.
Yeah, this is a good topic because I like asking different athletes what their thoughts are on skipping legs or training leg day, and what I say is I well first I'll talk about like my personal experience with it. So when I was going to school, I had to walk a lot because my campus was really big, and I also have a job where I work outside, so I do a lot of movement. So I'm always getting a lot of steps in. And I also have like a background as a track runner, and I think genetics kind of plays into like the way my legs are aesthetically too. Like I don't really have chicken legs, and that's something you often hear like in the calisthenics community. So I think lifestyle has a big reason to do with it too. But I agree. I think training for functionality versus muscle mass is the most important thing. But the main reason why I go back and forth between training legs or not is because my style of calisthenics is statics. Like I want to be a high level statics athlete. So that would mean having like planche, front lever, and it's very debatable. Or it's a very debated topic in the community. Should you skip legs? And I think it really just depends on your goals and what you want.
Right, because
What would you say?
I mean, that is true because if you do have bigger legs, that's more weight towards the other side of your body. So if you're trying to hit those more advanced moves like planche, front lever, Victorian, as you start pushing that weight away from you, if your legs are fucking thick and huge as hell, it's probably going to be, you're going to exert more force up top, whether it's on your shoulders or lats. And so you'll have to, maybe you can build your strength up at the end of the day, we need more experiments. We need more people joining calisthenics so we can get their opinion. I think maybe. I think one thing that I like that because calisthenics, and I've told you this before, is like you forget about your body composition and you just really focus on a lot of those moves. And when it comes to legs, I've kind of forgot like I can hit like 10 pistol squats each leg right off the bat. But then I'm like, okay, what comes after reps? Like, I don't want to just hit reps. Like, then I'm just going back into that gym rut and cycle. So I've thought now I'm like, I've kind of made a new goal in when you're training your upper body, you're you're like, okay, I want to unlock planche. Ooh, I want to unlock handstand. For now, when I'm training legs. I'm like, okay, I want to unlock dunking. I want to be able to dunk. I have to increase my vertical. And so then I forget about the workout that I have to do because I want to unlock dunking. And the only way to unlock it is to work on plyometrics. And plyometrics means working on your legs.
I don't want to tell people to skip leg day. I think I think there's a better. I get what people. I don't think people have bad intentions when they say that because the person probably does want those static moves. But what I would say is maintain your legs, stretch often, and train for, like we mentioned, the functionality. So the pistol squat is a great exercise to do because it teaches balance and stability. So I do a lot of those when I do train legs, but I would say to have a balance between training like your upper body and your lower body. You don't want to completely neglect your legs, but at the same time, you want to train them. But it's really about the approach. So I wouldn't necessarily go to a squat rack and do like a bunch of squats or do a lot of like weighted presses with your legs. I think that's what you see the bodybuilders do. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think if you're somebody who wants to do bodyweight training, you just need to have a different approach. And that may mean training them not as frequently as you may train like your chest or your shoulders or your back and your biceps. You still want to train your legs, of course, but I think you have to factor in intensity and just a functionality.
Right. Because another thing too is that if you're a gamer and you're sitting down for a long time, you're not activating your legs. And so then if you're not actively moving your knees, like you can start messing up your knees because that's one thing I've realized just because uh I mean like if you neglect any joint or tendons or muscle group, that's not the most efficient thing to do because I mean the whole purpose of calisthenics is to be able to have complete control of your body. But if you go for a sprint and you never run and then you pull uh you tear ACL, it's like that defeats the whole purpose. And so really just movement and functionality, I think, is something that I've been putting an emphasis on. But what type of leg workouts do you do?
I do I'll do pistol squats. I'll do reverse leg extensions, and
Nordic?
I'll try. I don't do a lot of Nordics. I'm not that familiar with that move.
Really? Oh, the one where you're like, your knees are on the ground and basically sitting up straight. Someone holds your ankles or your Achilles heels and you start leaning forward and you contract your hamstrings. You ever seen that move?
I've seen it, but I've never tried it myself.
I heard those are, I mean, they are really good for your hamstrings. I want to be able to unlock it. I want to be able to like go maybe about like quite low and then pull myself low back up. Like that's the objective.
It must be really difficult. I don't see it done a lot, but at the same time, like the calisthenics content that I watch, you don't see a lot of leg work anyway.
So you're saying the algorithm's feeding you something different
If I go on Instagram right now, I'm probably gonna see a plant just like the first thing.
on your explore
Probably,
page, right? You see like
yeah.
four different planches, right? That's the same thing with me.
And then they make it seem like the plant's just so easy, and you just have to like do this to get a planche. And it's like, yeah, that is true, but the timeline to unlock a full planche is going to be very, very long. And social media will skew people's perceptions of believing that if they just do it, then they'll just maybe have it in like an instant. But it's really it's a long journey. I mean, it took me five months to get a front lever, and my problem with the front lever was pushing my hips through. So having like that straight line, that was really like my main issue with the movement. But once I had that, then I just did a lot of front lever raises and holds with the band. But it still took me a long time to get it. I'd say at that point I was probably 2.5 months in, and by then, like at the end of the 5 months, I was able to hold it for 5 seconds. But I think the planche is going to take a lot longer than the front lever. And there's a few reasons for that. There's some theories that I have, but it's like stacks like that. They're very, very difficult.
The front lever, because people hear front lever right now and they're like, oh damn, he unlocked it in 5 months. But what would you say was your background before that? Like, were you able to do pull-ups? Like, how many pull-ups could you do? How comfortable were you with the pulling exercises, or what were the prerequisites that you had before you felt like, okay, let me start attempting the front lever?
Yeah, my pulling foundation was pretty solid. When I trained pull days, I was doing 3 sets to 10. And after that, I kind of started experimenting with different pull-up variations. So I learned archer pull-ups. I learned typewriter pull-ups. I started training my explosive pull-ups, which I don't think that really translates to the front lever, but
The
I
other ones
think
do.
yeah, for sure, archers and type those do. But I as far as prerequisites, I would say
Were you lifting weights before you met calisthenics?
yeah. So I was doing regular like weight training for 2 years before I got into. So from 2021 to like the end of 2022, I was going to the gym consistently, and I had a pretty solid foundation. So when I did start, I immediately started like going for the skill moves because that's what drew me in. That was the biggest appeal for me. I was seeing things that I never saw before, but I thought the moves looked cool as hell, and I was like, "Yo, like I want to do that." So that's that's what drew me in. But because of my foundation, I just immediately went to learning like all the basic movements.
And so you were able to unlock like tuck planche and stuff pretty quickly too because of your base.
Yeah, so I'd say like the first thing I learned was an L sit, and that move was actually really humbling because I wasn't I wasn't able to do it on the floor when I did learn it. I had to do it on an elevated surface, and that move looks really easy. And I mean, it's considered easy in the community, but a lot of people who like are gym rats or probably even bodybuilders may not even be able to do an L sit correctly. But anyway, yeah, I learned. I say like by the first 3 or 4 months, I was able to do an L sit, a tuck planche. I had a back lever and I had the muscle up. Like this is within like a 4 month time span. I had those were the first things I learned.
And that was because you had that background with weight training. So I mean, I would assume that also when you were weight training, you were also just doing pull-ups too. Because that's kind of how I was when I would do weight training. I just did pull-ups because I was like, oh yeah, let me just do pull-ups.
Yeah, and growing up, I always struggled with pull ups. They were very hard for me. So once I got more competent with them, I they were a pretty main staple in my workout routines. I would usually start with pull ups because I found them to be the most difficult move at the time that I was doing pulling wise. So that's one of my favorite. I say that's one of my favorite fundamental moves between like the push up, pull up, dip squat. Pull ups are probably my favorite.
You're saying one thing that you said was when you were weightlifting for over 2 years and you transitioned over to doing more predominantly calisthenics, you had attempted the LSIT. What was difficult about the LSIT, and why do you think it was that even after 2 years of weight training, you weren't able to hold that the LSIT, which would be like a rudimentary entry level move in the calisthenics community?
Yeah, I think it was lack of ab compression. Because when you think about the L sit, it's really your legs have to be straight. So it's really the hamstrings, the hip flexors, and the triceps. And I always thought my abs or like my core was strong because like towards the end of 2022, I was focused on like anime aesthetics. Although a lot of them are unrealistic, I still wanted like an anime level physique. So I mainly focused on developing my core and like the aesthetics with my abs. And the way that I found out about the L sit was I saw a video that was 3 exercises to get a 6 pack, and the last one that the guy did was an L sit on the floor. Well, the other two I did no problem, but at the same time, this was the only isometric out of the other two, and I couldn't do it. So I'm like, fuck, man, I can't do this move. He's telling me I need to do an L sit to get a 6 pack. Well, let me look up how to do this move. But to answer, going back to like answering the question, I think it was a lack of ab compression because you don't really train that when you do like when you're doing ab work as like a gym bro. You're not thinking like ab compression. What the hell is that? That's probably what somebody would say if I say that to somebody, but that's probably what it was.
Right. So I mean, all the gym bros who they always finish their workouts out with abs and they do Russian twists and crunches. You're saying that doesn't translate over into being able to hit the L sit?
Not really, man. And that's the thing about calisthenics is it has a lot of specificity.
Yeah.
Very a lot of specificity. There's a lot of complexity because you're first off you're usually engaging your whole body, and then you may need specific strength in certain areas like your elbow tendon. So
Yeah.
you need good straight arm strength. Uh, you need to have the proper form cues in place. So you need to have a protracted scapula or like depressed shoulders. You need to have retracted scapulas for a front lever. You need to engage the hips, which
Squeeze
I
the
think
glutes.
squeeze the glutes. A lot of that goes into play. And the thing about like regular strength training is you're usually isolating like a muscle group, but you're not contracting the muscles in your entire body. So going from weightlifting to calisthenics, that's probably the hardest part about making that transition. Is it's pretty eye opening when you realize, oh my god, I have to use my entire body, and I'm using muscles that I didn't even know we had in our body just to hold a move that on the surface looks so easy. And some moves kind of are easy, but we have very small muscles, or like there's parts of our body that we don't really train that now we need to in order to achieve those moves.
I think one thing that you said was about the specificity training that ties in with weightlifting as well. If you want to get good at front lever, you have to start practicing front lever. If you want to get good at bicep curls, practice bicep curls. Like that's that's all it is. Really, if you want to be good at uh the shoulder machines, like all the machines that they have at health centers, if you want to get good at that, do that. But if you want to get good at calisthenics, you have to hit the moves. Like just practicing those machine, especially because those machines, they have these little graphs that show what muscle group it is that you're working. And you're like, you would think that, oh, the lat machine is showing me that it's going to work my lats. That should translate over to calisthenics, but it just doesn't, because it isolates the lat. But you don't want to isolate the lat. You actually want it to work in conjunction with other muscle groups.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't want people to misunderstand too. Like we talk about like gym bros and like you have calisthenic bros, but most people say gym bros. But you're right. Like if you want to be able to bench 2 plates or 3 plates, then you need to train bench. If I want to achieve a 5 second front lever or a 5 second full planche, then I need to train front lever and planche. I think the problem is that there's just like a general misunderstanding of somebody who tries weightlifting and gets into calisthenics. There's just like a lack of awareness of, okay, I need to change my approach if I want to achieve these results. So I mean, yeah, if you want to get better bicep curls, then yeah, do that. You just need to train or tailor your training to whatever your goal is. But it's not to say that like gym bros or guys who train calisthenics, like one's not better than the other. But I think that's another like point of contention too. Like some people may have like a superiority complex when they think about like those two archetypes. But I wasn't thinking about like bringing them together, but I think that'd be like really ideal for me is to see like both of those communities kind of be more not be as hostile as I've seen on the internet. I don't think that may not be the case in person, but based on things that I see online, like sometimes both communities kind of hate on each other. I think it may just be like a misunderstanding between the two.
Why do you think that the gym bros hate on Cali bros?
I think calisthenics is misunderstood in some ways. I see a lot of videos of people that do calisthenics in the gym or out in public, and they'll get mixed reactions. And I think some people may perceive that as they're trying to show off or like flex. And on one hand, that is true, but on the other hand, I think it can serve as a point of inspiration, and that's what it did for me. Like, man, the first I remember this too, and sometimes I go back and I watch the video to compare my progress. But the first video I watched like that, the dude he like he didn't jump, but he like leaned into a planche and then did a planche push up, and the guy was like walking by and he just stopped and stared at him, and he was like, "Yo, what the hell is this dude doing?" Like he's probably never seen that before, right? So like seeing something like that, that's something that you've never seen before can like it can change your life or change like the trajectory of what you're doing just like that. But yeah, I think like there's like a show offiness or there's like a flashiness factor to calisthenics, at least with like the statics. and that can sometimes give the sport a bad rep, and that's probably why gym bros hate on them.
because they can show off their moves anywhere in public. Whereas if you're a gym bro and you're trying to show off that you have a 400-pound bench press, you got to bring out the bench, you got to bring out the plates, bring out the barbell, bring out the spotters. This is all that extra noise just to show off. But you know what's funny is that just because you do have a 350 bench press, that doesn't necessarily translate over to being able to have the strength to do a planche, which is lifting up your entire body.
Yeah, they don't have that body control. That's the thing they're missing.
And that's what I'm starting to see with calisthenics is that a lot of it is about thinking while you're hitting the move. Like you need to be thinking, okay, what am I not activating right now? What's lacking? What can I bring up? What can I start thinking about differently? And that's kind of why it's advantageous to use bands because then that gives you a little bit more time to think about what muscle groups are not being activated and and if you can try to alleviate some of the elasticity from the bands, then I feel like that you're on the right track. Whereas with weightlifting, you can kind of be like a caveman with it, man. It's like it's not rocket science to do a bicep curl. Whereas, bro, front lever is rocket science.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, when like if somebody's doing a bench press, it's a lot more simplistic compared to a planche or a front lever. It's planche or front lever is extremely complex. You have to think about so many form cues to just to do the move correctly. Whereas with a bench press, it's just a lot more simple. So I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both sports.
And but that's why I also like calisthenics over the gym because it's it's that challenge, the technical aspect that makes it more interesting. Whereas if I'm just doing, military presses with some dumbbells, sitting down, not engaging my legs or my core, just trying to target my shoulders, like that gets boring over like 2, 3 years. But dude, being able to hit handstand push-ups for me, that never gets old, especially when you start getting reps and you start feeling it. You start and then you can and then from there it's easier to start leveling up into other moves. Whereas, I mean, if you're leveling up in your military dumbbell press, yeah, you can go from 35 pounds to 45 pounds. But whereas if you're unlocking handstand, you can go to handstand presses, you go to handstand push-ups, one arm handstands, one arm planche handstand. Like there's all these new routes that you can go and you ultimately can decide what you want to unlock.
Yeah, there's different like there's statics, there's hand balancing, there's weighted, there's dynamics or freestyle. So there's different avenues people can take. And I mean with weightlifting, it's really just a matter of adding more weight. But with calisthenics, there's levels like you explained. There's upper echelons for certain moves. You were like a handstand. Okay, now do a handstand push-up. Okay, now do a 90-degree handstand push-up. Okay, now start training for one arm. Or start doing a weighted handstand push-up and then a weighted 90-degree handstand push-up. So there's different avenues for everything. And to me, calisthenics seems more like a lifelong experiment.
Yeah,
That's how I would describe it.
you have to be thinking long term. And you know what's funny is that when I first started on my planche journey, I kind of started maybe about 3 years ago. That was during like towards the end of COVID because I'm like, okay, these gyms are never really gonna open or they're gonna be like quasi opened, and then I gotta walk around with a fucking mask. Okay, fuck that. I'm not gonna be going to the gym then. So what can I do? So I started seeing planche, and I'm like, okay, I can do that because I had seen Chris Harrio. I was like, okay, I can probably start training that for maybe about a month. I should be able to get the planche. My ignorance, right? And then you start trying it, and then you're like, bro, how the hell am I gonna unlock this? And then that was actually a little bit of discouraging because then I'm like, damn, I'm just not gonna, this is gonna take way too long. And I started kind of thinking about the one quote that I heard from Bill Gates, even though he's evil, but I heard him say, "You can." A lot of people uh, overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And really, if you look about how the elites are moving, they move with like long term plans. Like the timelines are not in quarters; they're moving like in decades, probably. And
Yeah.
if you think about calisthenics, you got to have that mindset. You can't just you can't over estimate what you can do in 3 months, because truth be told, if you look at it from a 5 year horizon, you probably could unlock a lot of those moves.
Yeah, I think a big thing that holds people back from calisthenics is there's an intimidation factor to a lot of those moves, and they just simply think that they can't do it. Like I remember one time I was at the gym in my school, and this guy that I met in the gym a little bit before, he saw I don't remember what I was doing, but he like complimented me, and I was like, "Thanks, man. When are you gonna start?" And he was like, "Oh, I can't do that." And in my head, I'm thinking like, "Yeah, you can. Like, it's not." As much as you train like in the gym or bodybuild, you could easily like start and get it in. I don't know how long it would take him. I don't remember what I was doing, but like he was very dedicated. But him saying that he can't do it, well, it's like if you say that, then and you believe that, then you won't be able to. But yeah, I think a lot of people they start and they underestimate how hard it is, and they're thinking very short term. And because they don't have like the quick result, they just give up and they stop and they don't think long term. I'm not saying you have to think decades, like you said in that quote, or like Bill Gates said, but it is a long game, and it. I understand why people like get discouraged. Like I'm discouraged with certain moves that I'm working on. I'm still trying to improve my flexibility to get a straight handstand, and I've talked to you about this like a lot, and I mean it's gotten better, but it's not like at my desired level. I still that's something that I still deal with. I deal with the planche like you, but you're a lot closer than I am. But I I any athlete who you could talk to any athlete who has a move that you want to learn, and they would say probably the same thing I'm saying now, that it took them a long time. They wanted to give up. It felt like an endless journey, but they stayed consistent. They had some sort of program that they followed, and they saw it through to the end. They thought more long term. They were playing the long game versus the short game, but that was something they really wanted, and it didn't matter how long it was going to take them. They were just committed to training for it, and they eventually got it. I think people just need to reframe how they approach their goals in calisthenics, and I think they'd be a lot better off with their results and their progress.
Yeah, I think that's another thing as well as people uh that could also dissuade them, kind of like the story of the person who they told you, "Oh, that's cool," and you said, "Yeah, you can start." And it's funny is because if they would have started at that moment, right now, like 2024 and today, they'd probably be really advanced. Like they'd be
Yeah.
doing some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah.
And it reminds me of that Chinese proverb where it's like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And when I think about a lot of these calisthenics move, I'm like, the one thing I think about was like, damn, I wish I would have known about calisthenics like 5, 10 years ago. I really wish I would have known about it like when I was a kid. That's all to be doing right now.
I know a lot of people got into it during the pandemic. I wish that would have been like a really good time for me. I wish I did.
But what were you doing in the pandemic instead?
I had surgery, so I couldn't really train. And once I was fully recovered, I was I was still gaming, but I wasn't doing a whole lot. But yeah,
Damn. No, you're right. But even before the pandemic, they really need to be teaching calisthenics in school because there's no equipment. You don't have to pay for anything. You start teaching people how to do planche leans and then how
I,
to do L
I,
sits.
I remember at East Mac, there was one year where we had to use uh, we had to use like phone books as like part of whatever exercise we were doing, and I was just like, "What the hell? Like this school has no money."
Yo, a foam what?
Phone books,
Phone books?
yeah.
What is that?
You don't know what a phone?
Nah, phone
All
book?
right, all right, all right, all right. Are you
Oh,
familiar with
phone book. Oh, I
like
thought you meant
that?
foam, like
Are you
foam.
familiar with so
Yellow
like you?
pages.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're familiar with the yellow pages, like stuff
Right.
like that. We had to use props like that for
Bro.
exercises.
And you know what's funny? That is the calisthenics way. Bro, if you have books and you need to get an elevated service, just use books.
If I had to train in my room, if I was limited to my room and I had some phone books lying around, I would pick them bitches up and just use some phone books, man. You gotta be creative with calisthenics. That's the beauty of it too. You can manipulate anything. You know, the world can become your gym. If I'm a guy who does like if I'm a bodybuilder, what about like using some phone books or some yellow pages? But if I'm training calisthenics, I'm like, okay, like I got something. I need something to either supplement like the weight or something to prop my feet on or something to support like my arms. I gotta use something. So if I only got the yellow pages, then I'm gonna use the yellow pages. So you have to be more crafty. You have to be more creative. You have to improvise. There's a lot of manipulation with the things around you with calisthenics, and that can be very eye opening in and of itself compared to bodybuilding where you have to use a bench or a squat rack or plates or dumbbells.
Yeah, that's the great thing about calisthenics too, is that the world becomes your gym. You could see a branch sticking out and you're like, ooh, I can do muscle ups on there. Or if you see a handrail, you're like, ooh, I can practice front levers on that. Or you see something that's like even textbooks, that's that elevated surface, you can start practicing planche leans on there. You can use it as yoga blocks if you're using textbooks, or depending how big the book is. You can use it for splits. And so that's the great thing about calisthenics. Whereas if you're a gym, if you're a gym bro, you have to go to a gym. Like there's no other way you can get a workout.
They're pretty limited.
All right, so let's bring it back to the gamers though. You know, I know you were telling me a lot about biohacking and how you feel like gamers could really be taking advantage of it because that's kind of their alley. Do you think you could talk a little bit more about how you think biohacking and calisthenics for gamers can be a good combo?
Yeah, that's a project that I'm planning on working on this summer. I like when I think about biohacking, there's probably like a lot of ways people can define it. And I think just the word biohacking may I think people may hear that and think like it's kind of esoteric. But I think like if I was to define biohacking, I would just say it's having like a set of habits that like improve your lifestyle and longevity and health. So the reason why I want to make that into like a video is a lot of gamers are inside, and that could be for a number of reasons. Maybe they're just confined to the room or their house. Maybe they don't have access to go to a gym. Maybe they don't have a park that's close by that they can walk to. So part of the project is going to show that they can still have a dynamic lifestyle while still being a gamer. So that would include doing a lot of walking and doing a lot of stretching, both dynamic and static stretching to improve their flexibility and their mobility. It would also include them working out, preferably outside. I think there's a lot of benefit to training outside versus training in your room. Because like when you're in your room is a box, but yeah, you can go downstairs, but you're just going to a bigger box. But once you go outside, it's I don't it's kind of shapeless. I would say and like there's a lot of benefits to sunlight, but I think I would encourage people to train outside. That'd be a part of it too. So to really boil it down, I would just say like it's a it's like a holistic lifestyle shift from being sedentary to more dynamic, and that has a lot of benefits for long term health versus going to a gym and immediately seeing results.
Immediately seeing results from, I guess, if they're just trying to get like those beginner gains, or what are you saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards. Like, I think, I stretching in general is one of those things. Like stretching, flexibility, mobility is one of those things that I don't think is talked about enough in the fitness community. But our joints and our muscles they get weaker and stiffer as we get older, and sitting in a chair for 8 hours like you're at a shift at a job isn't going to help that process. So the best way to like delay those like that inevitability is to move your body, and you do that through stretching and both dynamically and statics, and walking, running, jogging, having some sort of cardio and some sort of frequent movement. I think that's really like the key, one of the keys to life. So I wanna promote that. I want that to be a big part of biohacking for gamers.
Right. And it can be really for anyone who has like a long s- shift sedentary job. So it can be someone who's like working at a call center or working some white collar job, looking at spreadsheets, or even if you're a truck driver, and not just gamers who are sitting down for a long time. Like, well, actually, a lot of jobs around the world require people to just sit down for long term, like a long period.
Yeah, it applies. It doesn't really apply to. It applies to more people than gamers, but I would say gamers is kind of like that's the world that I come from. I think that's the world that most people can relate to me the most at. So like a big part of that project is going to include like calisthenics like in your room or just in your environment, which well it's likely somebody's room. So a big part of that is going to be like exercising, but I also want a big part of it to be like the dynamic movements, the stretching, etc. Like I said before, I think it's one of those things that is really underrated, man, and I really want to drive that home.
You said you came back from, or you came from a background of gaming, and so you can relate to them the most, more than any of those other sedentary jobs. You came out with on your YouTube channel. For those of you guys who don't know, you Zara has a YouTube channel called McChillin, and one of his videos went semi-viral, and a lot of people resonated with his story. Do you think you could kind of talk about that story of that video? It was Confessions of a failed pro gamer.
Yeah, so I mentioned this at the very beginning, but yeah, I was a competitive gamer for 6 years. I played Mortal Kombat and Injustice. So basically, I would travel to events around the US, and I tried to win. I tried to be a pro. I tried to make a living gaming, and I was able to win local events, but you don't really make money from those because there's not a lot of people that enter, and there's no pot bonus, there's no developer support. But when I travel to tournaments like Combo Breaker, which was this past weekend in Chicago, when I go to Evo, which is in Vegas, which is like the biggest, that's like the world finals for fighting games. I would go to tournaments at that level where there's international competition, there's hot bonuses with developer support. It's a qualifier for like a world finals for the game. I was never able to win anything that major. So yes, I did make some money because I won some locals, but it was never anything crazy. I was never able to like I still had a regular job, to sustain myself, but I wasn't making money that was able to sustain myself through video games. But that was my dream for 6 years of my life. So that's what I did. I like I said, I stopped competing for a few years, and I decided to make a video that just highlighted my years competing and my lack of experience or lack thereof that came from competing. Some examples of that are like lack of socialization. So, a lot of times people will go to an event, and these events are usually from like Friday through Sunday. So, you play Friday or you play Saturday, and then the top eight or the top 16 or the top 32 is on Sunday. Sunday's like championship Sunday. There are tournaments where I would compete Friday and I wouldn't make it out of the pool or the bracket and I'd be eliminated. And I was like I'd be off from the whole weekend and a lot of the time like I'm out of town, but that would just kill like my whole mood and I wouldn't want to like be there anymore. I'd even be there with friends who hadn't played yet. Like maybe they played Saturday and like I just get so emotional about it. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. I wouldn't want to interact with anybody. I wouldn't even want to look at the game because I was already out. Maybe I had like a bad performance, or maybe I just got outplayed. But I was definitely younger back then. But there are a lot of opportunities that I had to like network, meet people, socialize, have a good time, and not doing well at a tournament kind of spoiled that experience. So that's like there's more examples, but that's probably one of the biggest examples that I have where I missed opportunity and I had like a lack of experience where I could have like develop myself more socially if I didn't have that response to losing. But yeah, it's like I go more in detail with it in the video, but that video kind of sparked my channel and it really like motivated me to go the content creation route and to make more videos like that where I give my personal experiences on things and just like tell more stories that kind of relate to people.
Now that you've unlocked a lot of things in calisthenics and kind of maybe been able to make real world connections with, uh, I guess, the way or like the philosophy, because one of the videos you had on YouTube was about like the artistic and the enlightenment side of calisthenics. Do you think if you were to go back and start as a gamer, knowing what you know in calisthenics and training methods and the way to unlock and be successful in the sport, do you think any of that can translate over to gaming?
It probably can. I'm having a hard time thinking of explaining how, but I'm sure there's some carryover.
Would you say the only way to get better at the gaming, I guess like the gaming career, is to just get reps? Like, what were those kids or those other athletes, the esports athletes, doing to beat you to win? What were they doing better that you weren't doing?
That's an interesting question. Uh, the first thing I'll say is you have to play a lot. Like you have to play a lot, and the reason for that is at least in fighting games. I'll speak on that since that was what I competed in. There's a lot of different characters. Some games have big rosters, so you need to have a lot of matchup knowledge. So you don't want to. A lot of the ways that I lost was just lack of matchup experience. Maybe I saw something that I hadn't seen before, and it was something that was gimmicky. But it had like an easy counter, and if I knew the counter, then it would have changed the matchup completely, and the guy would have been able. He would have been forced to play more honest instead of just kind of being a little cheap. So that's one way. So matchup knowledge is really big. Uh,
But it's just time played too. They probably had more time played, right?
I don't know, man. I was very dedicated. I was very dedicated, but at the same time, I think like as dedicated as I was, there were still matchups that I was kind of shaking in. So I think my approach probably could have been better. Like the way I trained could have been better. I think, uh, I mean, a lot of pros like they hang in the same circles, so they play with each other a lot. So they're getting like they're playing a character who can be played at the highest level. So they're getting like the best matchup experience because there may not be somebody who's a better player with a certain character than that player. So part of it is like being in the right circles, and a lot of the time, well, I don't know about a lot of the time, but some of the time, some people are like really closed off, and they won't give you games, they won't play with you because this isn't every pro, and I personally haven't experienced this myself, but I'm friends with some people who have. Like some people, they only play you in tournament, but they won't play you in casuals like after the fact, because they may have beaten you, and they were like, shit, man, like I'm better. I don't need to play you. Like what the fuck?
Oh,
Yeah, some of that goes on, so it can
or
be
they're
some.
scared. They're like, "Fuck, if you beat me, it's like, damn, I beat you in the competition setting, and now you're beating me out here in regular exhibition match."
Yeah, like they may sandbag too. Like they may let's say they do decide to play, they may use one of their pocket characters, and you're like, what the fuck, man? Like I wanna play like the real shit. Like I wanna play who you would play me like you would play me in a tournament, except it's not a tournament. A lot of that goes on too. So there's a few reasons behind it, and that's what it makes it more difficult to like break into that scene, break into the upper echelon. Like I was friends with like Evo finalists, which is like that's pretty. So like at Evo, everybody in the top eight they get an Evo medal, and that's a pretty big deal. I was friends with people who got Evo medals, and I've had players, I've had friends who like I train with, and they were like, "Bro, you were so good, like you definitely have the skill for it. Like you're not bad at all. You got the fundamentals or whatever, but maybe you just came up short." Because a lot of times too, it may just be that it comes down to like the last hit or like you made one bad decision. Like I don't know if you've ever seen any of my matches, but at least the ones that were like on stream and that are like on YouTube. But there were some matches that were like pretty close, and it wasn't a matter of like, oh, this dude was a better player by a pretty wide margin. Like you could tell, like yeah, there were some matches where I got destroyed, but then there were some matches that were very close, and it's hard to say like, oh, this guy was a better player than Ezara because he beat Ezara. Because if Ezara could have easily won the match. Sometimes it comes down to like a hit or a guess or something like that. So there's a lot of nuance that comes from losing and fighting games. So it makes explaining why I always came up short. It makes it hard to explain because there's a lot of reasons behind that.
I guess one thing that kind of correlates to calisthenics is that really the people you train with can dictate or can influence your gaming style, your training style, your dedication. Because one thing I've seen is that usually if you go to these places like Spain or Eastern Europe or Latin America, most people who are out there training right outside at their local park, all the other people actually tend to be pretty high level athletes as well. And so they're kind of just feeding each other good knowledge. The only thing that I see is that in the gaming community, they're a little bit closed off and they don't really allow new members to come and practice with them, which is kind of also similar to like if you're trying to get good at Muay Thai or you're trying to get good at Jiu-Jitsu, if you're training with a whole bunch of white belts, there's only is you can only get so good. It isn't until you start training with the black belts and you start getting your ass handed to you, you start figuring out new ways to shut their game down, or you start building your own game in the sense of like your program, your tactics, which is similar to the gaming world, esports.
There was a Street Fighter player named Daigo Umehara. He's considered to be like one of the most legendary players in like the whole community, even extending outside of fighting games. But he's like a pretty notable figure, like in gaming, and he wrote a book. And one thing that he said in the book was that I don't want to misquote it, but he says something along the lines of there's lessons to be learned from everybody. So and I think what he meant by that is that like regardless of skill, you can look outside of like you mentioned the white training with white belts and not really probably being able to get much out of them because you may be like at a higher level than them. But I think people just need to be more open because yeah, he may be a white belt, but he may be an expert in other areas of life. So you may be able to gain some benefit from him, even though that benefit extends outside of the current environment that you're in. But I still think that there may be something that you can get from him as he's a white belt and you may be like a blue or a red. There's still maybe some information or there's some benefits, some value, whatever that you can gain from him. And you shouldn't be so quick to be apprehensive or closed off just because he's at a lower level.
Definitely. I think one thing, not that you shouldn't train with people who are lower than you. If anything, that's a great place to start teaching because then I don't know if you ever heard of like the Feynman technique. The Feynman technique is like a studying format where if you're trying to study or memorize or learn anything, the Feynman technique is you teach it to someone. And when you teach it to someone, you start seeing what you don't understand. You see the holes in your knowledge. So then when you go back to figure out your game or your plan, you start, or maybe they ask a question that you had never even thought of. And then that changes your whole training regimen or your whole program or the way you approach certain moves or certain tactics, certain strategies. And I heard there's this guy named Jim Quick. He's like a world memory champ. He was saying how if you teach something, you get to learn it twice. And so, and then you take it to your black belt friends, and then you get better. But when you were saying how the elite players in the gaming community were kind of closed off. That's kind of what I was mentioning. Not that you shouldn't train or play with, or yeah, in calisthenics too. You shouldn't train with people who are lower than you. You could use it as that opportunity as a teaching and learning moment.
I've read his book, Jim Quick. I read one of his books, Limitless.
Nice. Okay, that's a biohacking too, but like if you're trying to learn how to biohack to like have a healthier brain and remove all brain fog, I'd say that's a pretty good book. What did you learn from it?
Yeah, one of the things towards the end, I think he talked about memory and concentration, and it teaches a lot of different techniques. For one in particular that I remember is let's say I was gonna tell you a story. Oh man, I'm trying to okay. How did he?
Oh, the Memory Palace.
Yeah, it was a thing where like I give you a set of words and you have a certain amount of time to memorize them. And I think the way he taught it was tell a story using the words because that'll help with remembering them. So it's like a memory hack. I don't think I'm explaining it the best way. Like, there's probably a more concise way to explain the exact method, but that's what the method was.
Yeah, I know he's talked a lot about that one. I don't know if it was slightly different, but there's one where it's called Memory Palace or Memory Palaces, and I've also seen that it's been used by like military officials who need to learn a language quickly. But what they do is that, or if they need to store information quickly and very important information, what you do is that you label a number or that word with a piece of furniture inside of a house, inside of your imagination. And when you walk through that house, say like the number one is a vase, number two is a laptop, number three is a desk, number four is a cat. So then when you walk through that house again, you see everything is associated with an object. Every number or every word that you're trying to memorize is associated with some sort of object inside of that house. And that makes it easier for you to remember whatever it is you're trying to remember. And I've seen him do where he asks everyone just a random number, and he goes through like maybe about 40 people, and then he recites the entire number back to them, and then he does it backwards.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's crazy, but that's one of the hacks that he teaches. They need to teach that in school. They don't teach that in school. In school they don't teach you how to learn.
Yeah, one thing he mentions is that in school they teach you rote memorization, which I think is where you just read information, like you just keep rereading it and rereading it and rereading it to try to commit it to memory. And that's how a lot of people study for like tests or exams. And he was saying school teaches that, but that's not the approach you should take if you're trying to learn something or commit something to memory. That strategy that you named is good. And then the other one where you tell a story and you're using the words in the story, that those are way better methods for memorization. Yeah.
and I and I've also used that too because he mentioned it, how you can use it to memorize people's names. Is when someone gives you their name, you try to make like a little quick story in your mind about their name and with their face. So then the next time you see them, you think about that story and you're like, oh, that's John. Oh, that's Jordan. Or that's James. And it's like maybe for Jordan, you thought of like Michael Jordan dunking, but with his face. So then when you see him, you're like, oh, that's Jordan. Because the first thing that comes up to your mind is him like dunking with his tongue out, coming off like the free throw line. But yeah, that's some would you consider that biohacking?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
What would you consider to be biohacking? Or like what is the definition of biohacking? Because if someone's asking you like, "Oh, you're into biohacking," what is biohacking? What would you explain to them?
How would I describe biohacking? Cause I'm like, so one thing that I'm working on is I want to train my brother I want him to be really shredded, and so I'm gonna have like a workout plan that I make for him, but I also want to include like some biohacking protocols. And okay, I was looking for the way I described it. So I would say it's a practice of adjusting changes in lifestyle, diet, exercising, and sleep to optimize health and well-being. That's how I would define it.
So it's optimization. Do you think calisthenics falls in that category?
I think it does because if you want to get good at calisthenics, then you need two things. The first thing is strength, and then the second thing is flexibility. And flexibility is one of those things where you may see like bodybuilders or people who like are very good at weightlifting, but maybe they can't touch their toes, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of benefit to being able to touch your toes. There's a lot of functionality that comes with that, right? So you can be hella strong, but if you have no flexibility, if you have no mobility, then you're kind of lacking. That's I don't think that's good. So like I think yeah, I think it goes back to how I talk a lot about stretching and flexibility. I think that's a big like if I wanted to teach somebody like biohacking or ways to like get into it, I would tell them to start doing a lot of dynamic and static stretching. I think that's extremely essential.
Dynamic and static stretching. Okay. And
Like
what
I'm
about for diet?
I stretch a lot, man. Like I'm training for splits. Like I spend a good 15 to 20 minutes just doing nothing but stretching after my workouts. Like I really like it. I've really gotten I've really gotten dialed in with it, you know, and I would say more so than the people around me that I train with. I mean, there's some like everybody that I train with in calisthenics, like they definitely stretch and warm up, but I don't know, man. I just feel I'm very deliberate with the way that like I I I warm up and cool down my body. You know, I think it's one of those things that it kind of gets overlooked. And I mean, I get it. Like it's kind of boring, or it can be. It's not the most exciting thing. People, I can't tell you how many times like I go to a gym and I'll just like observe, and I wonder like how many people actually warmed up
Yeah,
before they went straight to their working sets. You know, so I'm a big proponent, man. I
yeah,
really
real
am.
warm up.
Yeah,
Because some of the warm ups, especially when you start getting into the advanced moves, sometimes it's safer to take like 20 minutes to 30 minutes just warming up.
I talked to a guy who he told me he spends 40 minutes, and this is he's an advanced guy, but part of that has to do with the fact that he had an injury a while ago. So that plays into it too. But I wouldn't be surprised if like these guys that we see on Instagram that are extremely high level, they probably take like upwards of 20 to 30 minutes just doing nothing but like warming up. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be surprised.
just activation and going over rudimentary moves like Australian pull ups or just using the bands, just like simple stretches. But yeah, I would like to implement more stretching too because I'm trying to unlock the middle splits. I feel like I want to get middle and also both side splits. I can kind of get I'm getting closer for my full splits, but that middle split, that one's tough.
That one takes time, man. I mean, I've seen some progress in myself with it, but yeah, that one I think that's the most difficult one, is it not? I think it
Yeah,
is.
definitely, bro. That one's tough. But also just being able to, like you were saying, touching your toes, that translated into calisthenics because if you're trying to do toes to bar, if you can do toes to bar with your legs straight, most people who do toes to bar, they start bending at their knees, but they start and they overcompensate by bringing their hips up a little bit higher. Whereas if you could just keep your feet locked in and then just raise them, touch the bar, that might be able to translate over into a handstand press. Because a handstand press, when you want to do the handstand, you want to lean forward and then just lock your knees and then just push forward. But the thing is, if you can't touch your toes and you're trying to do a handstand press, another thing that might be an issue that I've seen with some people who I've trained is that they have too much of a gut. And if you have too much of a gut, you can't touch your toes. So that's going to
Mhm.
inhibit some flexibility as well.
So they have a high body fat percentage.
Yeah, super high body fat. So, and that gets in the way if you're trying to touch, or even if you're trying to do like tuck planche. I'm like, all right, bring your knees in. But they can't bring their knees to their chest because there's a gut in the way.
Yeah, so that's a good way to bring it back to my diet or diet in general in terms of biohacking. So I'm still adjusting my diet. I'm still I want to get to a point where I experiment a lot with certain foods, and some people call it like potions, which is like
Yeah,
when I
I
think
love calling it potions.
when I think potions, I think like Pokemon, like oh you have potion, super
I think of
potion.
Shrek.
Oh my god.
I used to play the Shrek 2 video game, and there's this one final level where you have to bust all the potions and get Puss in Boots through. So whenever I hear potion, that's the first thing I think of.
Yeah, nah, but diet is an interesting topic though because we all have personal taste. We all have certain restrictions, allergies, you know, there's a lot of things that can go into like you not being able to eat certain foods. So I it can this biohacking and diet is that's a big point of contention isn't the right word that I want to use, but like it's a pretty big like if you had biohacking like in an umbrella, I would say diet is a pretty big part that makes up that umbrella. But like with my diet specifically, I do I do a lot of intermittent fasting. So I'll skip breakfast and eat like twice a day. And on days where I didn't have the best diet, maybe I had a cheat meal, maybe I just ate kind of poorly, I'll spend the next day and just fast and just do like a water fast for 24 hours. I think that's a great way to lose body fat is to of course you want to be careful and like I would start intermittent and then like decrease the window and then try like a 24-hour fast. But I think fasting is a great way to get shredded quickly to lose that gut that you mentioned. Um, and then beyond a water fast will be a dry fast where you just don't have anything. And I don't think I talked to you about this, but I did a dry fast like it was either it was either last weekend or the weekend before because
Okay. How many hours?
there was a Friday where I like my diet was pretty bad, and I saw a video of a guy who he did a 7 day dry fast and talked about his experience. And I was like, I'm gonna try not 7 days, but I'm gonna try it. So Saturday, and I work too. And for like added context, I work outside, and it's pretty humid here in North Carolina. So I did a dry fast Saturday. It was cool. Sunday there was some debate on because I made the decision to fast for the weekend. So that's
Okay.
number one.
That
So
mental decision.
yeah, I literally made a mental decision. I was like, I'm not gonna eat any food this weekend. I just wanna
Because you ate like shit on the Friday or Thursday.
yeah. And
Okay.
I treated it like an experiment. I just wanted to see how I would feel, how it would be, because it was new. At least like fasting for this amount of time. Like I've done dopamine detoxes where I think fasting is included in that. So I have prior experience with water fasting, but I did a dry fast for 24 hours. So like Saturday, it was cool. Sunday, I had some debate on if I should keep it going or just go with a water fast. I decided to break the fast with water. So Sunday, I did a water fast, and I think I kind of messed up because I didn't drink a lot of water throughout the day. Like I woke up with water, but I didn't drink any more until like 4 in the afternoon, and I think that really messed up my energy levels. Like I was working all day Sunday too, and it was becoming more of a struggle to get through the day. So like around that time, I started drinking more, but I think by then, like I was still kind of going through the motions and not really like at an optimized level of like performance and functionality. But I still did it because I made the decision to do it. So I'd say like moving forward, I don't think I need to do a dry fast. I think that's too extreme for me, given like my body
You're,
composition,
you're
my
already low
current.
body fat.
Yeah, I think if I'm in a situation like that where I feel like I need to fast to like balance out a bad diet, I would just do a water fast for a day, and then I'd feel satisfied. But
You're probably feeling a little out of energy, even though you started including water because you didn't put any salt. Or if you're gonna drink the water, you had to replenish those electrolytes. Because I know that's usually what happens if you're doing prolonged fast and you're drinking water. You got those salt in there,
yeah, salt, electrolytes, I think potassium too, because
potassium.
I recently bought I bought a different brand of water, and it just has potassium and like electrolytes. So um, yeah, so I mean, it was a good experience. Like I'm glad I did it. I think fasting though is an important part of biohacking because our body is a machine and it it needs rest. So like one thing that I incorporate is I try not to eat a few hours before I go to sleep because I don't want my body to be working trying to digest food when I'm trying to sleep. So that kind of also leads into sleep optimization. So I want to have a good quality of sleep, and a good way to have that is to sleep when you're hungry, not sleeping when you're full.
Yeah, because if you're spending that time in your digestives, your body is laying down, not doing any sort of exercise. The calories are just not going to get burned. And then what happens is if your body is sending energy to try to digest that food, it's not going to be sending the blood flow to your brain, which is really where it's supposed to be going when you're sleeping.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. I just try to stay away from like a lot of fast food, a lot of artificial foods. I don't drink a whole lot. Like it's pretty rare for me to drink. I've never been a big sweets person. I don't like candy. I just I try to
Love
have
candy.
as I just try to have as balanced of a diet as I can. So something that prioritizes a lot of protein, a lot of healthy fats, good carbs. I try to simplify it, but at the same time, like I've been compiling a list of like some foods that I want to include into my diet, or at least try out. Because okay, another way to look at biohacking is like I mentioned before, you have like diet, exercise, sleep, and like overall lifestyle. I would say my 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 lifestyle and like the way I train are pretty dialed in because I do calisthenics, and I'm pretty regimented with the way. Like I'm still expanding the like my my stretching routines, but I'd say I have that pretty down pat. I would say my weaknesses really lie in like how I eat and like my nutrition. Not to say that like my nutrition is bad. There's definitely room for improvement, but I think I could optimize it even more to have even better results.
For the diet, because diet, I would say, I mean, I would definitely say that diet plays a big role in biohacking because that's the energy you're feeding your body.
Yeah, energy input. Yeah, that's right. So I mean, but at the same time, like I mentioned, there you may have restrictions, things of this nature. So it can be difficult to follow a strict diet. And I don't know if okay, do you think there's a such thing as a perfect diet? Because I don't think that's it. I don't think that exists.
I mean, not for it, it definitely can't be a cookie cutter, one size fits all for the whole population. Like everyone probably needs different protein amounts, different amount of macronutrients. Some people obviously have allergies, so they can't eat certain foods. But as far as the perfect diet, I mean, as long as people are getting the most essential minerals and macronutrients that they need, that the body needs, that is the perfect diet, right?
That's one way to look at it, but I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist, right? But
Okay.
I would say perfectionism is an illusion. So I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect diet. I think you can be like as optimized, as regimented, as organized as you can be, but I don't think that is fully sustainable. I don't know, man. I think it's a good question. I don't. I would like to think that it does exist. I think that might be me being really idealistic about it, but I think
There's probably no perfect diet, but there are great diets, right?
I mean perfect. I mean 10 out of 10. Like I mean perfect in the most literal sense that you can think of the word perfect. You
So I mean,
know.
like if money wasn't in uh, a variable and you could pay for anything, you want Wagyu beef, you want fish straight out of Japan. You're saying if you could craft your diet, it still couldn't possibly be perfect.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask people this. Do you think you could eat the same thing or the same things every day for the rest of your life?
If it's I mean, technically, you should be able to, because when we were hunters and gatherers, there's probably not too much variety.
So us evolving as a species probably has to do with making that more difficult. Because I think you're right, but I was gonna say I think variety, like I think we crave variety, and we didn't have it was harder to have variety back then, but nowadays we do have it. So it makes having that perfect diet more difficult to achieve and even sustain. So I don't know.
Maybe the perfect diet is just a simple diet that someone can keep with. And that's what a bit of I guess advice that I've once heard is that the best diet for someone is the one that they can stick with forever, because you should just make it a lifestyle. Why is it that you'd only eat, you know, what was that one brand that Oprah Winfrey used to push?
No, I can't. I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember.
It was weight loss or something. Weight Watchers.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Imagine
yeah.
just like saying, "All right, I'm gonna do Weight Watchers only for this year." It's like, really, at this point of your life, if you're gonna make that decision, you should just say, "I'm gonna try to figure out a way to eat the way I want to eat the rest of my life." I don't want to put like parameters and borders around what I can or can't eat. A lot of it probably comes down to energy output. How much energy are you expending as well? Because when you're young like us and you're in your prime, like you can eat like trash and still put on muscle mass and look lean as hell. Whereas you get older, you know you can't get away with that.
So, well, you kind of answered the question, but I was gonna say, so you can outwork a bad diet.
If you're fasting enough, I think if you fast and you're not spiking your insulin, and at the end of the day, if you're eating beneath or at your basal metabolic rate and you are expending energy, you kind of can. You can't eat it. But what people don't, what the misconception is that for you can't outwork a bad diet is that they start eating over, they start having caloric surpluses. And that surplus, if you're not expending, it's going to start compounding and building itself and just storing itself as fat. But the thing is, you cannot out exercise a bad diet, because if you are doing it sustained or like for long periods, you don't have that same energy. Like if you're just eating Doritos and Twinkies and Taco Bell all the time, that's gonna be you're gonna see that in reflection in your training. You just the way you recover, the way you sleep, all that sugar, processed grain. So I mean, is you could if people can get to a whole foods diet, that's probably better.
Yeah, it's all connected, and I'll say that I think it's easier to outwork a bad diet if you train calisthenics because
Hell yeah.
yeah, everything is a compound movement
Hell
and you're
yes,
engaging
bro.
your
That's
whole
a
body.
fact.
Yeah, but uh, yeah, I don't like having a lot of parameters on what I eat also because I mean, like on one hand, okay, so on one hand, I do like to eat, and but on the other hand, I do think that sometimes we eat too much, and we need to give our body a break to really like digest that food. But I saw a comment recently because they were talking like it was a video and they were talking about foodies, and I think food is a great way to connect with people.
Yeah.
So like you can have a good experience with food. You know, it brings people together. So I think it's a good part of the human experience. So I like on one hand, I don't want to limit myself to be so strict and regimented. I want to leave room for variety, which is a lot. There's more accessibility to variety now in the modern day compared to like the age of our ancestors. But on the flip side, I do understand that we need to give our bodies a break and know when to not eat. So I don't know, man. It's an interesting conversation though, for sure. The topic of
Well,
food is very complex, very complex. A lot of nuances, a lot of intricacies. There's a ton of information, man. Like I'm in this biohacking community, and they talk a lot about different foods. Like, oh, I've heard if you eat 6 to 8 eggs a day, that's bad for you. Oh, but eat that much daily, and I don't have any problem. Or I heard if you like add these type of salts into your potion, like it has this sort of effect. Oh, but if you add this type of ingredient, then you have this effect. And it's like it kind of it makes finding information difficult because there's just so much out there. Even if you're in like a community of people who are like they may be experienced biohackers. They know more about me about diet and nutrition, but even I get confused on like what's the best thing to eat or what's the best approach. So it's tough, man. There's a lot to say,
there's a lot to learn,
a lot to learn too. Yeah,
and the best way to get into it is just start and use your body as your own your own lab. Your body, you should be able to do your own experiments. The sad part is that most maybe most of society may feel like they can't even test out those diets or those fasting windows unless their doctor approves. And the doctor doesn't even know them. The doctor sees them maybe like once every 6 months, once a year. And when they do see you, they see you for 5 minutes. They don't fucking know you.
yeah. Ah,
So
man.
it all
The,
comes down to experimenting because that's another thing that I had with another client is that some cultures are they eat more grain, they eat more carbs, they eat a lot more bread. And he's like, man, I just love like for example, I know uh, one of my friends, he's from Pakistan, and he was telling me how they do like this huge bread with rice and halal, and I was just like, well, bro, you gotta either fast, shorten that feeding window, and maybe cut down on the bread, and then also do enough energy output, which is why I always recommend calisthenics. Because calisthenics will get you a good pump because just like you were saying, it's a full body compound movement. Whereas if you're just going to the gym and you're just doing tricep extensions on the rope, bro, you're wasting your time. It's not, that's not efficient. And that's the great thing about biohacking. Biohacking is about efficiency. How can you get your brain working as efficient as possible? And a great way, your brain is a muscle. So you have to train the exterior muscles so that way your interior muscle that needs to work the most, it can get to working. And also heard that if you are, I think I read this in some sort of research paper, when you're eating, about 15 to 20% of the calories go to your brain.
mm,
Because and that makes sense because I also remember reading, or I think it might have been some podcast, but there's some chess masters. They were sitting down and they were doing a scientific study, and they were tracking how many calories they burnt. And I think like after like 3 or 4 games, the chess master, they had on average burned about 6,000 calories. Yo,
six
look at your face. Yes, bro, 6,000. I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast. I think he
from
said that
three
like a long
from
time
three
ago.
or four games.
Yeah, just sitting down.
Well,
And they're
from
grand masters. So think about that. That internal movement inside their brain is burning calories while they're sitting down. Whereas if you go on some sort of elevator master or those tread masters at a regular gym, or you're just walking on a treadmill, you'll be lucky to burn a 600 calories in 40 minutes. Whereas these chess masters are sitting down on their ass, burning calories. And you're out here on a treadmill thinking you need to be doing boring shit to burn calories.
Yeah, I was gonna say for one, chess grandmasters, I think they have like a certain brain chemistry about them, like the way their brain is wired. A lot like that. That's a big reason. why they're able to become grandmasters in the first place. But a big part of that too is like the cognitive function. Like we can't see what's going on inside their head, but there's like I was not expecting to hear 6,000 calories in 3 to 4 games. That is insane. But yeah,
Bro,
a big part of biohacking is like improving that cognitive function.
yeah,
You know.
being as sharp as possible. And fasting helps with that. Because if you look at it as from a the biological evolution standpoint, when our ancestors went a couple days without eating, their noradrenaline start to shoot up because the brain can't just start shutting down after 2 days of not eating. If anything, it gets sharper because it knows it needs to find energy. So it needs to go kill prey.
Mm.
And that's why when you're fasting, you feel a little bit more like sharp, like you're not as groggy. Whereas if you just ate, you start chilling, taking a nap, you just like you don't want to do too much work.
It improves that mental clarity. Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe it could help gamers. So maybe gamers need to be fasting more.
That's a great point. That is a great point. Yeah.
Like they need to be doing calisthenics and fasting.
Calisthenics, biohacking, fasting, do it all, and you might be the next top 8 contestant at Evo. You never know.
Okay. Uh and let's start wrapping up with that because it's been an hour and 45 minutes and I know you're busy. I guess if you to wrap it up because you are the go-to guy if anyone is a gamer or an esports athlete. What is the I guess what is one piece of advice that you would tell anyone who is a pro gamer and they want to get into calisthenics as their format or their form of exercise as opposed to weightlifting or if they're doing CrossFit or something else?
I said this at during one point in the podcast, but I would say focus on strength and flexibility because those are if you break down calisthenics at its most fundamental level, you need strength and flexibility to do whatever it is you want. So for strength, that's sets and reps, build hypertrophy, and with flexibility that comes with stretching a lot, dynamic, static stretching, having that dynamic lifestyle that involves a lot of movement and stretching. I think to simplify is in place or have those 2 things in mind: strength and flexibility.
Strength and flexibility. Okay. You mind telling everyone where they can find you and what do you have in store for your content creation pages in these next couple of months?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at McChillin, Instagram. I am McChillin, all in one word. Uh,
How'd you come up with that name? I should have asked that. Well, where did McChilling come from?
yeah, I was in an Xbox Live party one day, and the guy was talking about we were talking about food, and we were talking about McDonald's, and somebody mentioned the McChicken sandwich. And funny enough, when I was eating McDonald's, that was my favorite sandwich. And they both have like McChicken and my last name both have the MC. And I think I had the word chillin' as part of like my prior gamer tag because I think that's a good way to like describe me personality wise is like the word chill or just the fact that like I'm always chilling or I'm always in like a chill mood, right? Like I'm a pretty relaxed, easygoing person. But yes, he said McChicken, and I just put 2 and 2 together and came up with McChillin, and I stuck with it.
And that was your gamer name too?
I mean, it's my gamer tag. Yeah, I don't know what it was before that. I'd have to. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to think on what my prior gamer tag was. It was probably something with the word chillin' in it, but McChillin is short and sweet, so I definitely like that name a lot.
So that's where people can find you though. To bring it full circle is on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, I am McChillin, all one word. YouTube, McChillin. As far as content creation, so yeah, I recently graduated college, so I have a lot more free time now. And I had a lot of success from my first video, Confessions from a Failed Pro Gamer. And it really motivated me to pursue content creation seriously. So that's what I'm planning to do this summer. I'm planning to go to Evo, so you'll potentially see me on stream playing Mortal Kombat. We'll see if I can make a legendary run as a guy who's competing 6 years later, get his first top eight at Evo. That would be a pretty sick story.
That would be
But yeah,
crazy.
I'm doing that in July. Right now, I'm working on I'm working on more videos. One in particular, from field pro gamer to calisthenics athlete. So they'll talk more about my transition from being a gamer to training calisthenics and how I want to bridge the gap between the two. But you can expect more videos like that, more calisthenics content as I become a stronger athlete, and more content that tries to tie fitness and gaming together.
Sounds good. I'm really excited because uh I know gaming esports is it's becoming a more accepted sports, and now the monetization routes for these young athletes who are interested in pursuing it as a career are starting to open up. They're starting to grow. The thing is, sitting down for long periods of time, that can kind of be detrimental. And so if we can figure out ways to connect these two groups of calisthenic athletes with gamers, I think that would be a good matchup. And you're sitting right at the crosshairs of that. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. This Calixia, Calixia.ai is just one of the first ever chatbots for anyone who has any calisthenics question. You just ask Calixia, and Calixia will give you answer any questions, feed programs or injury prevention, and hopefully I keep developing it in the future. And hopefully I bring Ezara back on the podcast. So thank you guys so much. Peace out.